This video contains spoilers for Invincible Season 1. If you haven't watched it yet, what's wrong with you? It's really good. For about the past 10 years, I've been hyping up this little indie comic called Invincible, because it's not just my favorite comic book of all time, it's straight up my favorite piece of fiction of all time. I mean, hell, a few years back when I had that really cringy green hair, I made a comment about how there needed to be an Invincible movie or TV show. And Jesus, we have really come a long way on the channel since then. But anyway, if you're watching this video, then I don't need to explain that Invincible did end up getting that animated series, and it's become one of the most popular shows of 2021. But much like a monkey's paw, getting your wish granted almost always comes with a horrible catch. And man, the catch for me pretty much getting my dream show was pretty bad. See, the Invincible animated series is fantastic, and in my opinion, it's one of the greatest comic book adaptations of all time, being equally great as the original comic. While the comic takes more time to flesh out the world building and side plots in a way that the show simply doesn't have time for, the animated series in turn elevates parts of the source material with great things like voice acting. A great example of this is the character of Machine Head. His auto-tuned voice adds a lot to his characterization and makes him a much more interesting and memorable character. Not to mention that the Invincible comic is very 2003 at times, and with the hindsight of knowing what works and doesn't work, not to mention the series creator Robert Kirkman evolving as a writer, and there being more staff involved with the show, the animated series was able to tighten up its storytelling in a lot of ways that makes the overall flow work really well. One of the best changes from the comic, though, was the character of Mark's mom, Debbie, becoming a much better character. You see, Season 1 covers roughly the first 13 issues of the comic, with some stuff from later issues kind of sprinkled in there for good measure. While the plot twist of Omni-Man killing the Guardians of the Globe happened in Episode 1, it happened in the comics at the end of Issue 7. So while the animated series has this element of everyone trying to uncover what happened to the Guardians looming over the viewer's head for the entire season, the comic goes from the reveal to the fight between Nolan and Mark in a matter of 4 issues. And also, you know that whole plot about Damien Darkblood trying to get to the bottom of things? Yeah, that was 2 pages total and barely even a thing. Debbie being suspicious of her husband's involvement in the slaughter, completely new content. I honestly think that this subplot was very much needed, and it adds a lot to the character of Debbie Grayson. She has an actual character arc for the first time, instead of just being the typical mom character like she was in the early issues of the comic. In addition to that, Twitter user ArcBlog said it best. Debbie has an absolutely normal arc in relation to the trauma she suffered, and people hated her for it. Yeah, here's the thing. Remember how I mentioned that monkey's paw from earlier? Well, the issue is that when pretty much anything gets popular, it brings in a lot of really terrible new fans. And look, I'm not trying to be here to tell people how to enjoy stuff, and I'm also not trying to gatekeep and say that these people aren't real fans. But I can't deny that it really does suck that a series as brilliantly written as Invincible is frequently reduced down to, wow, cool bloody superhero stuff, and can Omni-Man beat Goku? That stuff is annoying, sure, but surface level nonsense is common and exactly just that. Annoying. Where the vile stuff from the new fandom is being directed is at Debbie Grayson and Mark's girlfriend, Amber. So let's get the Amber stuff out of the way first. Much like Debbie, Amber's role in Invincible was completely reworked from the ground up. Obviously, the elephant in the room is that her race was changed in the animated series, which frankly isn't a huge deal because her ethnicity isn't a major character point in either series. But on top of that, Amber really didn't have all that much to do in the original comics. I mean, hell, she barely had any lines in the original 13 issues that Season 1 is based on, and the stuff that she was in after that was honestly pretty boring. She didn't have any personality traits of her own and just existed to create melodrama and conflict, with Mark constantly ditching her to be a superhero. All that volunteer work stuff that we saw in the show, that was completely original. In the comics, Mark and Amber end up breaking up because Mark is constantly not available since he's out superhero-winging, and because he seemingly ditched her to save himself during the attack of the Reanimen. But when Mark revealed his identity as Invincible, Amber instantly forgave him, despite him being a really shitty boyfriend. Maybe it's just me, but I think that the reworked Amber is a much more compelling character all around. And frankly, I think that her new attitude leads to much more interesting conflict and character dynamics. I think that it's great that she figured out that Mark was a superhero, and that the show explored the emotional impact of her knowing that her boyfriend didn't trust her enough with his secret. While lots of people online have demonized Amber for being selfish since she's upset for not being more of a priority in Mark's life, I really enjoyed the scene of him more or less only revealing his secret identity as a get-out-of-jail-free card for their fight, and Amber just seeing right through it and not taking any of his shit. The girl was constantly stood up and lied to, so forgive me if I think that being frustrated is a perfectly normal way to react to that. I mean, look, not everybody is emotionally built for being in a relationship with a superhero, and that is totally fine. The right person for Mark is out there, and believe me, he is going to be getting with her pretty damn soon in the show. Additionally, the arc of Mark and Amber's relationship is a parallel to the tension between Debbie and Nolan. It's all about trust and how a lack of it in a relationship can completely destroy it. Now that's what I call narrative parallelism, which is why it's not that surprising that the other character these folks are generally being shitty about is Debbie Grayson. See? I told you that we'd be looping back around. Admittedly, Debbie got a fair amount of hate in the Invincible community back when the original comics were coming out, because for a long time, her main personality trait was just drunk. But hey, suppose your spouse has been lying to you for 20 years, is actually a mass murderer, beat the shit out of your only son, and then said that they only viewed you as a pet. I mean, bruh, I would be hitting that bottle so fast in her position. Although Debbie was always a great mother to Mark, she definitely became a better character as the comic went on, becoming a pretty integral part of the series. And like I said earlier, Debbie in the show was given a lot more depth and agency as a character, which was combined with her now being the emotional core of the series, reminding Mark about his humanity at the beginning of the season, and was the driving force in giving Nolan his humanity. See, for as violent and bloody as Invincible gets, it's a series with a lot of heart. I cannot count the number of times that I have gotten shocked reactions from people when I say this, but Invincible is an extremely heartwarming series. Even as the characters experience insane levels of physical and emotional hurt, most of them recover in large part because of love and compassion from their friends and family. Remember, it is not normal for a Viltrumite to leave a planet that they're trying to conquer, and being on Earth, and specifically being with Debbie, did change Nolan. Now, as far as how much you want to forgive a mass murderer who literally held his son through a moving train, using him as a weapon to slaughter hundreds of innocent people, you know, that's up to you. The show's reworking of Debbie Grayson further adds to the credibility of Nolan's change in perspective, and while in the original comic I read his comments about her being a pet to him as cold and heartless, you can really tell in the show, thanks to J.K. Simmonson's incredible voice work, that Omni-Man is seriously trying to convince himself that he doesn't care, even though he truly does deep down. This is an extremely powerful moment in the series, and it's pretty fucked up that the takeaway for a large portion of the new fandom is to just call Debbie a pet whenever she comes up in conversation. Like, Jesus Christ, when the Invincible social media accounts posted photos of her for Mother's Day, the comments were flooded with dozens of dudes, and let me make that clear, it was pretty much only dudes, spouting the same unoriginal, "Oh, you mean Pet Day, right?" It's like Full Metal Alchemist fans. They only have one joke, and they will take every opportunity to post Nina Tucker in any situation. I don't know, dude. Maybe I'm just a sensitive little SJW libtard snowflake, but this whole thing just feels gross. Especially when you take a wholesome Mother's Day post and turn it into this, even going so far as to post bondage fetish art of Debbie in the comments that I absolutely cannot show here for the sake of demonetization. It also sucks that this stuff is getting spouted about a genuinely great character that helped save the world through nothing but the power of motherhood and empathy. She's Mark's moral compass, and this stuff seems like it's being fired off by dudes that brag about how they love dark humor, but when they go to tell a joke, it's not dark humor, it's just like racism or homophobia. And hey, I get the defense of, it's just a joke, or it's just a fictional character, calm down. But I can also understand that there are women that have been in abusive relationships that have had their dignity taken away be justifiably triggered by seeing Debbie treated like this, and it being legitimately painful that this particular joke has become a meme within the community. Plus, it's also a little iffy with the submissive Asian woman stereotype, and, you know, the whole historical context of problematic relationships that come from American military bases following the Vietnam and Korean Wars that specifically make this particular pet joke a bit more yikesy in comparison. But I can acknowledge that I am probably not the best person to be leading conversations around these points, so hey, let's move on. And here's the thing, even though the comments on the Mother's Day post are pretty annoying and gross, I can admit that this whole situation with Debbie and the fandom really isn't that big of a deal.
Well, Drake, if it isn't a big deal, then why are you making this video complaining about it?
The problem is that this is just a preview for the absolute toxic shit show that the fandom is definitely going to be going through when some much heavier stuff comes up later on in the series. Okay, so this part of the video is going to have a couple of spoilers for the comic book now, so if you don't want that spoiled, then go ahead and click off. I had a mid-roll before this, right? So even the people that are leaving are still gonna end up paying me by watching those ads? Okay, cool. Also, a little bit of a trigger warning for some pretty serious stuff. Okay, is everybody ready for the deep spoilers? Cool. All right, so Mark gets assaulted, and I know that YouTube gets really finicky about demonetizing videos when certain words are used, but it's the big 4-letter word. You know, the really violent one that nearly 1 in 5 women have experienced? Yeah. This is a really tough moment in the series and has serious mental impacts on Mark as a character. He absolutely did not want it, and he blames himself for not forcing her off, even though he was physically stronger, as if some part of him secretly wanted it to happen. When posting about this scene on Twitter, I already had to deal with a gross discussion with a dude about how female on male assault isn't real, despite the fact that, you know, it definitely is. Additionally, even though it's not nearly as serious, there's a point in the series where Adam Eve puts on a good amount of weight. The comic fandom already had a field day about the quote-unquote fandom Eve, but you just know that immature folks on social media are going to be very disgusting with this stuff. And Jesus, don't even get me started on all the edgelord Joker avatars that are going to be posting cringy stuff about the philosophy of Dinosaurus. My biggest problem with the discourse around Amber and Debbie is that all of this is just a sign of what's to come. I hate that something I love has the potential to be, and is most likely going to be, an extremely toxic fan base to interact with. That Invincible fans are going to be met with the same eye rolls that you get from people when you say that you're a fan of Rick and Morty. Because actually, you need to have a really high IQ to understand the nuance of a show with a character that is literally named Mr. Poopy Butthole. We have seen this kind of stuff in fandoms before, but unlike toxic communities which spring up from series that just kind of come out, Invincible is a completed series, and we have the rare opportunity to see the toxicity that came out of it the first time around, and we can be better prepared for it when it strikes again with a much wider and more mainstream audience. But hey, those are just my thoughts as a longtime fan, and if how things have been going on Twitter are any indication, the comment section of this video is going to be an absolute shit show. Just please try to be kind. But hey, if you like this video, then why not consider subscribing, or even watching another one? I have lots of videos about Marvel and DC Comics that I'm pretty proud of, and I also have some more videos about Invincible in the works coming soon. So if you like this, well, chances are you might like some of that. So please, give me a watch, give me a like, give me a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. But hey, I hope you learned at least a little something new, and hopefully, I'll see you next time. The fan came on at just the right point. I don't know if it picked up on the mic, but I'm not going to do another take. Bye.